Melissa leaned against the tree, breathing heavily as exhaustion mixed with anxiety surged through her. She had followed Paul for over an hour, pushing through tangled bushes and uneven ground, her pregnant belly weighing heavily on her. Each step had been fueled by uncertainty, suspicion, and a deep, unsettling fear that her husband was hiding something from her, something she could no longer ignore. The sight of Paul's muddy boots after he claimed to spend all day in the cafe had been the final straw. Now she was determined to discover the truth, whatever the cost might be. Paul had always been her rock, dependable and sincere, yet something had shifted ever since they moved to this secluded house by the woods. Melissa replayed memories of their happier times, how their shared dreams had built this home filled with promise, a place meant for love and new beginnings. Yet now she felt trapped in a maze of doubts and half-truths. Her heart pounded fiercely, blending with the rustling leaves as questions multiplied in her mind. What was Paul doing? Why was he lying? Gathering her courage, Melissa moved cautiously onward, quietly approaching the clearing where she had glimpsed Paul moments before. She stepped around thick tree trunks and brushed aside low branches until finally Paul's figure came into view. He stood with his back turned, hunched over something, clearly oblivious to her presence. Melissa's heart caught in her throat. Her pulse thundered so loud she was certain Paul would hear it. She took another hesitant step forward, snapping a small twig underfoot. Paul's head shot up, spinning around to face her, eyes wide with shock. For a moment, time stood still as they stared at each other, neither moving nor speaking. Paul's expression shifted rapidly from surprise to guilt and finally, unmistakably, shame. "Melissa," Paul whispered, voice shaking, "what are you doing here?" Melissa tried to keep her voice steady, fighting back the swell of emotions inside. "I could ask you the same thing, Paul. You've been lying to me for weeks. Cafe visits? Really? What's going on?" Paul lowered his gaze, and for the first time since she had known him, Melissa saw genuine fear and vulnerability in his eyes. He seemed at war with himself, struggling with what to say. Finally, as if the weight of hiding had become too heavy to bear, he dropped slowly to his knees. "Melissa, I'm so sorry," Paul murmured, desperation coloring his voice. "I never meant for you to find out this way." A cold chill ran down Melissa's spine. "Find out what, Paul?" Without a word, Paul moved aside slightly, revealing what he'd been concealing behind him. Melissa stepped closer, heart pounding even harder, only to see something she had never expected. On the ground, hidden partially beneath a tarp, lay a beautiful hand-carved wooden cradle. Half-finished, wood shavings scattered around it. Melissa gasped softly, confusion replacing anger. She stared at the cradle, beautifully detailed with intricate carvings of flowers, leaves, and little woodland creatures. It was clearly a labor of love, crafted with meticulous care. Melissa looked back at Paul, struggling to understand. "All this time you've been out here, making this?" Her voice trembled with emotion. Paul nodded sheepishly, eyes filled with remorse. "When we moved here, money was tight, and we spent so much on the house. I knew how much you wanted the perfect nursery, the best cradle. I couldn't afford one like this, so I decided I'd make it myself. But I didn't want you to know until it was ready. It was supposed to be a surprise." Melissa's heart softened, the weight of suspicion melting away instantly. Tears filled her eyes as she realized the depth of Paul's devotion and the painful misunderstanding that had grown between them. "Why didn't you just tell me? I was afraid you'd insist I stop. Paul admitted, voice filled with sincerity. "You'd worry about me overworking or the baby arriving before it was done. I wanted to prove to myself and to you that I could do this, that I could make something beautiful for our child, something that meant more than just money." Melissa knelt beside him, taking Paul's hands into hers. "You didn't have to hide this from me, Paul. All I ever wanted was honesty between us. I thought you were keeping secrets, and it scared me." Paul held her hands tightly, sincerity shining in his eyes. "I realize now how wrong I was. I thought the surprise would be worth it, but nothing is worth losing your trust." Melissa gently wiped her tears away, relief and love flooding her heart. "It is beautiful, Paul, more beautiful than anything we could have bought. Our baby will cherish it just like I cherish you." Paul hugged her tightly, his earlier fear replaced by relief. "I'm so sorry for everything, Melissa. From now on, no more secrets. I promise." As the sun slowly sank behind the trees, the couple held each other, feeling a newfound closeness stronger than ever before. They remained in the clearing, discussing future plans and how honesty and trust would forever guide their marriage. Melissa watched Paul finish smoothing out the edges of the cradle, amazed by his dedication. In that peaceful twilight, Melissa realized how close she'd come to letting doubt and suspicion overshadow the truth. That Paul's love for their growing family had driven him to extraordinary lengths. The trials they'd faced only strengthened their bond, teaching them valuable lessons about communication, trust, and the power of forgiveness. Weeks later, on a quiet evening, beneath a clear, star-filled sky, Melissa gave birth to their beautiful daughter, Lily. As Paul gently placed their newborn in the lovingly crafted cradle, Melissa felt overwhelming gratitude for the man she loved, for their honesty, their struggles, and the beautiful and perfect journey they'd embarked upon together.